All right, we can get started. Show of hands here, just so I know kind of what the group makeup is. How many people here are part of an agency of some sort? Okay, good. That's about a good number. Anyone who's not? Okay, cool. So anyone who raised their hand who, okay, this is not part of the agency, totally cool. We're gonna pretty much have a few references to agency stuff, but generally speaking, most of it is applicable whether you're an agency or not. Sir Edmund Hillary, probably one of the most inspiring men you've likely never heard of. And for those of you who are not familiar with your New Zealand history, this man set out on a journey. He set out on a journey in 1953 with one goal in mind: to reach the peak of Mount Everest, over 29,000 feet above sea level. Now, this had been something that had never been done before. That's not to say it hadn't been attempted before. Many had attempted this journey and perished along the way. And so you could say that Edmund had his work cut out for him. So he got to work. He started assembling a team of experts that could lead him through this journey up the side of Mount Everest. Over 400 men made up his team. He had to get resources. It was a very expensive journey for Edmund to make. So he had to go to the New Zealand government and get a budget for him to make this journey. And they had to carefully plan everything out. All of the camps, all the steps along this 3-month-long journey, because if they didn't, it surely meant that Edmund's team would perish along the way. And lo and behold, on March of 1953, Edmund and his team set out. They set out on that journey that they had spent months and months preparing for. And, it started out pretty good. They got to their first camp. They set up. They started taking a look at what they needed to do the next day. They got to their second camp. But just as they were approaching their third camp, something happened. A storm. A storm like none of them had ever seen before. The types of storms that had claimed the lives of the men who made this journey before him. And so Edmund was in a moment of desperation. He had to figure out, what can I do to save my team? What can I do to make sure we can continue moving up this mountain? Now we're going to pause there for a second, and I'm going to ask this question. Does Edmund's story sound like something you're familiar with? Has anyone experienced something like this? Well, I've worked both internally at companies, I've worked at agencies, I've worked on the marketing team, I've worked on the web team, and you know what Edmund's story sounds like to me? It sounds like a website redesign. It sounds almost exactly like a website redesign. Because for a second, let's think about what your clients have to do when they want to go through a website redesign journey. They have to assemble a team of experts that can lead them through this website redesign. This is the agency that they're hiring or potentially building an in-house team. They have to get budget. A website's a very expensive endeavor for businesses. Average website, $15,000 to $60,000 US. And they have to plan everything out. Average websites, 6 months or more. They have to plan out, when are things due, when are deliverables due, when do we have to get approvals by. And the funny thing is that this actually starts to look like the side of a mountain. It's also funny because Edmund made it to the top of Mount Everest in under 3 months, less than it takes to build a website typically. So we go through all that planning, and I have a question for you. Who here has done a website redesign before? Like, you've been involved. If you're an agency, you've probably done it. Okay, so everyone who raised their hand can answer this next question. What emotions did you experience during your previous website redesigns?
All of them.
all the emotions. We experienced all of them. Yeah, there's probably a lot of highs and lows. Let's hear them. Shout them out. What are some of the emotions that you had other than all of them?
Overwhelmed.
What is it?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. What were you overwhelmed about?
The number of tasks that I had to accomplish.
6 months worth of work, putting it all together, trying to get everything done on time, all the little things that come out of the woodwork. Yeah, very overwhelmed. What else?
Anger.
Anger, okay. Who said anger? What about anger?
Oh, just eventually you get worn down and you get angry at the client for scope creep. You get angry at your team for not accounting for everything in the beginning.
Scope creep, that never happens. Who's been frustrated during a website redesign? Weird, like that, like everyone here has done that. So we were curious about this at HubSpot, the software company I work for, and we did a survey. We asked a bunch of marketers and agencies like yourself what emotions you experienced, and here's what we found. Wow, okay, let's level this down a little bit so you can see. So we have some excitement, and we have some pride, and we have some hope, like please. But equally, if not more, we have frustration, we have overwhelmed, uncertainty, a lot of these emotions that came up today that you were probably thinking of. And then my favorite one out of all of them is this little guy down here, which says vacation. Like, just get me the hell out of here. I need a drink on the beach. I need to relax a little bit. And that's because, the amount of time that you invest in this 6-month-long journey. A lot of times your clients have to put things on hold in other parts of their marketing to shift and really invest in this website. And inevitably, they almost always go over budget and get delivered late. This is just kind of the state we live in. Now, the other piece of it, from an agency perspective, is that it's a project-based business model. And what you'll see from the owner's side standpoint is you start to see this very big ups and downs of cash flow. Sell a couple of big websites, you have more work than you know what to do with, you're scrambling to get it done, and then the next month you're scrambling to make your next sale to be able to make your payroll. So this is a very symptomatic, this is the symptoms of this project-based business model. So out of all my years in the industry, one of the observations I made was that the traditional website redesign process is risky. It's risky for your businesses, as an agency, it's risky for your clients, going over budget, getting delivered late. It's a very risky system. But at some point, hopefully, you get to this point where the website goes live, your hands are in the air, you're like, man, this is awesome, finally this is done, and you kind of step back and look at all the things that you've put on pause, maybe other clients, things like that. And I have a question. So on a scale 1 to 10, think about how important is your website to your business or your client's website to their business? Think about that for a second. So we'll do a little poll. How many people here think that the website is not that important, like it's a 0 or a 1? Okay, that's what I expected. That's why we're here today, learning about this. How about a 5? Yeah, kind of, we could live without it, but it's important. Okay, more like a 9 or a 10, holy shit, if the website disappeared tomorrow, our business would be in big problem. Yeah, that's what we found in our survey as well. We found, we're all in agreement the website is pretty darn important to our clients' businesses, and our website as an agency is important to us. So now the real question, and I want you all to remember what your mother said about lying. If you lie, you go straight to hell, lying's the devil. How often do you make impactful improvements to the website? Not a tweak, not maintenance, not a blog, but the core website, really building on and improving and optimizing the core website. So, show of hands, remember what your mother said. How many people here, once a year, you get in there once a year, you really gut it out, you really build some things, at least once a year you get in there? Okay, couple hands. Once every 2 years, maybe when you just need a redesign at some point, right? That's pretty common. Once every 6 months. 6 months, you get in there, you really make some impactful improvements. Monthly? Okay, couple hands. Weekly? Okay, and everyone else doesn't really know. They don't want to answer because they don't want their mother to know. We found out that 42% of marketers generally go in once a year to make their updates to their site. And so we're operating in this traditional model where we have a website, it sits for that 1.5 to 2 years with kind of very minimal, impactful improvements, until it becomes so outdated and performs so poorly that we have to embark on this 3 to 6 month long website redesign journey where we hit all those risks, all those frustrations that we talked about. And this is kind of crazy because your website really for your clients is their number one marketing asset. It's their number one salesperson working round the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, educating and selling to customers. And it's your number one customer service rep. As the customers have questions, they're going to the website to try and solve those questions and solve those problems. But yet we let it sit for a year and a half to 2 years with very minimal updates. And part of the problem with this as an agency is that we really have never had a package system. We have this kind of system for launching the site, but then what do we do after? We kind of like just, the client ends up going a little MIA, and maybe a year and a half, 2 years down the road, they come back for some updates. And so this leads me to my second observation, which is the traditional website design process is not suited for optimal results. It produces poor results. You could summarize these two observations in kind of my thesis, which is the traditional website design process is broken. All these problems, all these challenges typically are not a lack of talent. You're usually working with very, very talented people. It's not even a lack of budget. I've worked on projects where they're like, Luke, you have unlimited budget. We don't care. Just do it correct. And we still go over, we still go late. We still run into all the same frustrations. All these challenges happen. It's because we're setting ourselves up for failure before the project even starts by using this broken playbook. So the question becomes, okay, well, Luke, we've been doing this for the last 15, 20 years. This is what we've been doing for websites. What are we supposed to do? Well, I envision a better way, and that way is called growth-driven design. And growth-driven design is a smarter approach to web design that reduces all those frustration and risks that we talked about. It's a smarter approach to web design that builds and drives optimal results using data, gathering real users' information and using that information to help inform how to build and improve the site over time, every single month. And it's a smarter approach to web design that as you learn about those users, as you collect data and you understand what they're interested in, you can leverage the website for other parts of the business, customer support, sales, service, everything. And at the same time, you can inform like things you've learned about the users to those organizations or those departments as well. All right, so let's take a look at how growth-driven design works. Growth-driven design has three main stages, and the first one is probably not a huge surprise to some of you. This is commonly what you do when you do a website redesign. It all starts with strategy. The goal of strategy is to develop an empathetic understanding of the world that your audience lives in. Be able to see the world through their eyes. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do outside the website, just in their world in general, so that you can start to find how can you best weave the new website in as a part of that journey to help them move quicker, solve problems faster. Now, in general, today in this presentation, I'm going to be going really, really quickly. So I apologize for that in advance. Don't feel like you have to scribble a ton of notes. I'll get to the presentation. We also have a full, free training certification that's open to anyone, and that has like the deep dive on all this. So bear with me as we go through some of this kind of quickly. Well, it all starts out with the strategy. The first step of the strategy is figuring out what are the business goals, what are the goals for the business at the very high level, and starting to reverse engineer that to find out how can the website be used as a tool for the business to accelerate towards those business goals. Right? I think a lot of times we come in with very narrow blinders where we think primarily about marketing, we think about leads, we think about generating leads for the sales team, and yes, that's important, but there's many other things that the company as a whole is trying to do that the website can be used as a tool for. So we first establish those business goals, then we back into what are the goals for this website and tie it down to some concrete metrics that you can measure to prove the value that you're providing to your clients. Now, the next thing we do is we have to understand the world of our users. So we go through user experience research or UX research. And this could be qualitative, doing things like surveys. User interviews are honestly the most underrated, underused form of research, especially from agencies. When I was back at the agency, I was like, man, these are always so time consuming. Like I got to sit on the phone for an hour. Can't I just look at Google Analytics? But I will tell you, when you're looking at building a solid strategy, user interviews are probably your number one tool for uncovering the gold that's going to make a successful website. So invest in things like that. So lots of different things on the qualitative side. You have quantitative side where you look at Google Analytics, you look at, depending on the tracking you have set up, maybe you have Mixpanel or you have Amplitude or a different type of funnel reports. to see how the existing website is performing today and how people are interacting with it. And then you may have things like observational research, click heat maps, scroll heat maps, user recordings, all really great stuff. So at this point, this is where if your client doesn't have some of those tools installed, first thing is get those installed right away. Anyone run into like a client comes in and they don't have analytics set up and you're just like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do here? It happens all, not all the time, but it does happen. And there's other tools now that are equally as important for informing this research as Google Analytics. The one that I like to immediately set up on all the sites is Hotjar, HOTJAR.com, or there's a very comparable, similar one called Lucky Orange. Anyone use Lucky Orange or Hotjar? Okay, good. Number of hands. You guys like it? Guys and gals like it? Helps inform some of the stuff. That's one of those things where it's just like right out of the box. You just set this stuff up. And we actually talk about in the certification setting it up during the sales process so you can open the eyes of the prospect to opportunities they're missing out on their current website, creating more need to build something new. So the next thing, jobs to be done framework. Anyone familiar with jobs to be done framework? Oh, a couple of hands in the back. That's good. Any care to explain, or should I give the overview? Okay, it's kind of confusing. So the jobs to be done framework is used a lot in the design community, and specifically with a lot of SaaS companies, software companies in Silicon Valley. We use it at HubSpot. It's essentially trying to break down why people, what people are trying to accomplish in their life and how your client's product or service fulfills that. So let me give you an example. There's an old sales adage that's when people go to Home Depot to buy a drill, they're not actually buying the drill, they're buying the hole, right? So it's like they don't care about the drill, they want to take that drill and do something with it. Where jobs to be done takes it is one step further, where they say, well, what do they want to do with that hole in the first place? Why are they drilling that hole at all? And you may find out that they're actually drilling holes so that they can hang family photos on the wall, because they want to relive these moments with their family, bring joy to their daily life by seeing the memories of the past with their family. So that's the question that 3M asked. If that's the progress they want to make, they want to hang these family photos to relive memories, why do they even need the drill or the hole in the first place? And that was the insight that led to those little 3M peelers, where you peel off the back, you stick it on the wall, and you hang something on there. No drill, no hole, solves faster, quicker, cheaper. And it's because they use this jobs to be done framework or theory to get to the end output someone was trying to do and then build a solution for that. Who's following me on that one? Okay, we got a whole video in the certification on that goes in more depth. But we got to figure that out, because we got to figure out what are these people trying to do so that we can adapt the website to make progress on that quicker. The next thing, fundamental assumptions. So if you look at your client's audience and you look at your client's business, and you look at the website, and you boil all those things down to the very root core, there's probably a few core elements, right? For the audience, it's the problem that they're trying to solve. We know what they're trying to accomplish in the job to be done. What's preventing them from accomplishing it? Why are you not able to do what you're setting out to do? Those are the problems they're running into. Then we look at solutions. How does your client's company help them overcome those problems and get to the job they're trying to accomplish? Then you get into what's unique. Why is your solution better than a competitor's? How does it help them get to that job to be done quicker? There's a number of fundamental assumptions. We have a worksheet in the certification, but really this worksheet, the reason we call them fundamental assumptions is one, these are kind of the core underlying things that make up your messaging and inform what pages do we put on the site, what types of testimonials do we need, what case studies do we need. All of that is based off of the things that are in the fundamental assumptions. And we call them assumptions because many times when I worked with clients, they told me well, here are the problems our users are running into. They're like, here's the problems our customers come to us with. And that's not always the case. I found that a lot of times our clients need to get out of their bubble a little more often and talk to their customers. And so that's why we call them assumptions. Until they're validated, we hold them as assumptions. Buyer personas. Anyone familiar with buyer personas? Okay, who wants to give me a definition of buyer persona? Just what is a buyer persona?
A made-up profile of what a potential customer or client would be.
Love it. Exactly. It's a fictional representation of your ideal customer. And you make different personas based off of different categories that you can group folks by. So at this point, we know enough about them. We know what they're trying to accomplish. Now we can start breaking and segmenting a little bit more so we can tailor messaging, tailor off like the offers on the site and things like that based off of different personas. We go into journey mapping, where we can go in and we look at the journey they go through from really early on when they first start to notice they have a job to be solved that they want to make progress on, all the way to I'm a lifelong customer and I've made repeat purchases. And we look at what does that journey look like? What challenges are they running into? What are their frustrations along the way? And then that helps, again, inform how we can use the website as a tool throughout that journey to make them make progress on it faster. Now, all of this, everything that we talked about, has actually nothing to do with the website. It's just about the business in general. And so this strategy, if you offer other services like marketing, sales, customer service, this is really the steps to go through no matter what services you offer, just to understand the client's business and the audience. But towards the end of this is where you flip. And now you have enough information, you can start making informed decisions about the website specifically, where you're looking at the website architecture, you're looking at SEO strategy, you're looking at some of these other more common things we talk about in the web design world, but all of these previous steps are now helping inform what that actually looks like. And lastly, this is where growth-driven design starts to get different than traditional design. Out of all of that, you get down, and the goal of the strategy is to walk away with what we call a wish list. And a wish list is 75 to 200 or more amazing ideas of really high impact items, things that are going to really help solve the challenges that we identified, make progress on it, and you're going to put them all up on a whiteboard and prioritize them. From there we move on. Once you have your wish list, you can move on to the second stage of growth-driven design, which is what we call a launchpad website. And essentially, a launchpad website is a site that looks better than what your clients have today. It performs better than how it's performing today, but it's not a final product. It's just a starting point. And that's because, like, we've kind of gotten in this notion that when we launch a site, we're like, that's it, it's done, we got to move on, and it sits for 2 years. So the client has this subconscious pressure that it has to be perfect for launch. And that's where you start getting into all this scope creep and everything. And so we've built this system where we identify that there is no such thing as perfect. And the only way that we can get close to perfect is to launch something that looks better and performs better than what you have today, and then every single month iterate and improve based off of the data, right? So the question then is, okay, Luke, how do we do this? How do we build a website quickly? And we do it quickly because we want to get something into the world, start collecting real data to inform our decisions. The longer that you sit in the back room, we call it the back room bubble, in the back room coding things on a local server, the more and more assumptions you're making. So one thing I talk about is the website is nothing more than hundreds or thousands of little assumptions, little guesses, all wrapped up into one big thing that you launch, and then you cross your fingers and hope it works. The sooner we can get that out there, the less assumptions we make and the more improvements we can make. So the question is how do we do that? Well, we do that first by, there's essentially 5 different what we call acceleration approaches. And this is when you have a strategist or you have a team that thinks about how do we go about tackling this new website. There's basically 5 different processes you can do. I'll give you 1 or 2 examples. Can't give them all for time, they're in the certification. The first one is just like an 80-20. So you look at your wish list and you say, what are the 20% of the items on this wish list that are going to make 80% of the impact to the original identified goals? And that's why the goals are so important to set in the beginning, because all your decisions tie back to the user on one side and the problems they're running into and the goals of the business. So you say, what are these items on the wish list, the 20% that make 80% of the impact on those 2 items, and you rank them. Anything that is in that 20%, you pull to the side, and then you do a second line of filtering, and you say, is this a must-have for the launch of the site, or is this a nice-to-have? If it's a must-have, you pull it over, and that starts to form the core base of your Launchpad site. Anything that's a nice-to-have gets put back at the top of the wish list It's already prioritized, and essentially what you're doing is you're building your roadmap for month one, month two. You already know what you're going to be executing on right after the site goes live. So again, that's like relieving this pressure that all of it needs to be done for the launch, and just saying this is the 20% of the items that are going to make 80% of the impact, and these are the must-haves. Everything else we're not going to forget. We're going to just get to right after the site's launched. Now, I think the common misconception with that is that's the only way to build a launch pad, which is not true. Some sites you can't cut a lot of stuff out. You have to have this big, robust site. So there's other ways you can go about it. One question I get with a launch pad is, what do you do if you have an enterprise site, a really, really big site? How do you build something like that quickly, something that normally takes 8 months? So one of the other acceleration approaches is called the launch and expand. And what the launch and expand is you basically break it into phases. Phase one is you take a look at all the global elements. So you look at the site-wide navigation, the headers, the footers, the styling, all the things that kind of span the entire site globally. And that you pull into phase one. That's what you're going to attack. Then you say, based off the business goals, which one of, if it's an enterprise site, you look at which section of the site. Is it their e-commerce? Is it their customer support? Is it their Japanese or multi-language? Like, which one of those sections of the site is going to have the highest leverage to getting us to those original goals we set? And let's start with just building that section as a new section. And that's going to be in phase one. So phase one is redo all the global, so everything matches between sections, everything's styled properly, navigation works, and we're going to tackle the highest impact section on the site. Phase two is we're going to tackle the next highest impact. And then after a few phases, eventually everything on the site is redone, but yet you're able to start getting things out there and collect data based off of these new section-by-section pages. That works really well for enterprise. It also works really well for super small sites. So if you work with like mom-and-pop shops, really small dental offices, the launch and expand approach can work really well for those because a lot of times they have limited budgets, so they can't necessarily tackle everything in this big project. All right, so again, there's 5 approaches. Those are 2. The rest are in the cert. The next one, the other way that you can, even if you build the sites exactly how you are today, another way that you can speed up the length of time it takes to launch is by switching to running what we call sprint workshops. So a sprint workshop is essentially a focused time box period where everyone that's involved kind of clears their schedule and does a workshop format to get to some type of deliverable. Let me give you an example. When I used to work at the agency, we used to do a lot of wireframing, and it sounded something like this. We'd go through all the strategy, we'd build out the wireframe, we'd send it over to the client for questions, revisions, approvals, and they were out of office, so then we had to wait a couple days, and then they came in and they had some questions, so then we held a meeting, but then they had to check with their boss, and then their boss was on vacation, and like maybe a week and a half later, we finally got approval and we could move forward. Does that story kind of sound familiar with approvals? Show of hands. Yeah, I think like that happens a lot throughout the process. So now we took this thing that was now a week and a half of time, and with a sprint workshop, instead what we said is let's get together for a half a day. And we're actually going to save time by doing this because we don't have as much back and forth. We're going to get together for a half a day. We're going to run a workshop. Run some activities in that workshop, and the outcome of that workshop is to get approval on all of the designs. We need you there. We need your boss there. We need anyone who's a decision maker. We'll have our team there, and we're going to walk out with all of our designs ready to go and approved. So now you're taking something that on a calendar took a week and a half or a week and shrunk it down into a half day at a time so that your team now can move a lot quicker. Make sense? Who's following me? Okay, we have a number of places throughout the process that you can run these workshops. They're kind of inspired by sprint workshops. If anyone's familiar with Jake Knapp's book and work that he did at Google Ventures. If not, check out Sprint by Jake Knapp. It's really, really good. But we talk about this in the certification as well. Moving along here, the last two ways that you can speed up a Launchpad site is being much more effective about content development. Anyone run into where the client project gets delayed because of content? It's like the hardest part. It's like you're pulling your hair out. It's like a nightmare. And so getting really smart about how to tackle content in a way that will not cause those delays, that'll allow you to move a lot faster. Again, for time, we can't get into them. I'm happy, I'll be here after if you're running into that and you want to chat about it. I'm happy to hold a therapy session and talk through what I found. That's another way that you can speed it up. And then the last one is just investing in your own internal efficiencies. So looking at what are we doing as an agency that we can do internally just to move faster, whether that's investing in building out pre-built libraries of assets that will allow you to spin up landing pages or pages more quickly, whether that's flipping from an Agile to a waterfall approach, which anyone who's familiar with Agile will notice that that's kind of the backbone of growth-driven design is Agile process, things like that. Okay, so we got the strategy done, we got the launchpad done, it's launched now. Now we can move on to the last stage of growth-driven design, which is the continuous improvement stage. And at this point, we have real users coming to the site that's interacting with the things, and they're telling us, and by telling us I mean through the data, through click heat maps, scroll heat maps, could be single page slide up questionnaires, but we're starting to collect information to make more informed decisions on how to improve every single month. Now, again, we're kind of built on this Agile backbone. We go through a process that starts with a planning step, moves to a build step, a learn step, and then a transfer step. And we'll go through each one of these quickly. But this is essentially what you're repeating on a monthly basis. Could be bi-weekly, depending on how fast you're moving. If you have a client that really wants to move quickly and has a big budget, you could do 2-week-long cycles, sprint cycles. Generally speaking, with agencies, I find like 1 month is a pretty good rhythm. You just don't want to go any longer than a month. Then you're not making enough progress quickly. All right, so the plan step. At the end of the day, the plan step is basically to determine, you want to come out of this, determine what are the most impactful items that we could build or optimize at this point in time to get us towards our goals. Which again, that's why it's so important early on you set those goals. Because that's your North Star. That's what all of your efforts should get you closer to those particular goals. Now the first step of that is finding focus. And I found myself for many, many years really struggling with focus on where to build and optimize a site, because there's literally thousands of places on a site you could improve. Like, should I focus on the landing pages? Should I focus on the menu structure? Should I focus on usability? Or should I do conversion rate optimization on a page? Should I do should I build a whole new section on the site? There's literally endless things that you could do. And so to try to pull in some focus, I put together a framework called the Website Performance Roadmap. And you can think of this for your strategist. This is a tool for your strategist, the person who plans out what you're going to work on with clients, a tool for them or a framework for them to help create that roadmap towards building a peak performing site. Now, this allows you to, again, provide focus to your team, but also set expectations to clients. So they know exactly what you're working on, but more importantly, why are you working on these things? Why are you implementing these particular things? And then lastly, each step in the roadmap has a specific metric you measure. And you can measure your progress at any given time based off of these specific set of performance metrics. So what does the roadmap look like? Here's a high level of it. We have a whole class in the certification on it. We basically have 3 different themes. We call them themes. And the reason we call them themes is these typically, we set it every quarter. We say this quarter's theme is either establish, optimize, or expand. And establish typically is the theme that happens anytime you launch something big and new. So that could be a relaunch of the website. You just launched your Launchpad site. It could be you just launched a new section. Establish is kind of the starting point. After a while, you start to see diminishing returns on your efforts here, and you go more towards optimizing. Let's optimize new things. And eventually you say, let's expand the site and impact other parts of the business with the site. Now, in established theme, there's 3 areas you could focus in. The first area we call, I'm a marketer, so I come up with stupid names for everything. I call it the harvest time period, focus. It's like where you can harvest the low-hanging fruit. You probably launched the site. There's probably some things on the wish list you didn't get to that were the nice-to-haves. this is a time you can start implementing those. There's probably some glaring issues that didn't really come through when you were building out the strategy. You can fix those glaring issues. So kind of harvesting any of those low-hanging fruit, you can do there. Then you can move on to the audience step. So the audience step is all about how do we get a fresh flow, an ongoing every month flow of visitors coming to the site. So does anyone know why having visitors coming to the site would be important? Any ideas? A lot of laughs. What's the, shut it out. Why do we need visitors? What's that? Conversions? And what do the visitors allow us to do with conversions and all of this? Collect data. Perfect. Yeah, you have to collect data to make those informed decisions. So of course, visitors are important from the marketing side to convert, to get leads for sales, but it's equally important for us as an agency to be able to have some data to work with. Otherwise, we're kind of making, again, those blind guesses. So there's a number of things you can do in the audience step, either building net new things on the site. A lot of times it's really tactics related to organic traffic. So blogging, building pillar pages, building content sections that are SEO optimized, maybe doing technical SEO onto a site, but really boosting people coming to the site. Now, once people are coming to the site, the next area we look into is value. Do the things on the site provide value to the people coming there? Does it solve problems along their journey? Or do we miss the mark? This is kind of your gut check point. Did we miss the mark in the strategy where we built a bunch of stuff no one cares about? And I'll explain why that's important in just a minute. So you do a little gut check there. You make sure, and there's ways to measure this. You'll see it from time to time. We use it at HubSpot. If you get to our help documentation, it'll say on a scale 1 to 10, how helpful was this document? It's like a little slide up. Anyone seen those before? That's a way you can gauge in a way on how much valuable some of the stuff is that you're building. So again, each one of these has a metric you can use to measure it. So now we kind of established it. At a certain point, you're going to switch your theme. It could be the second quarter, could be the third quarter. Just depends on the size of the site and how long it takes to get through this. But eventually, you're going to switch to the optimized theme. Now what you're going to do is you got people coming to the site. You know that the things on the site provide value. Now you can say, how quickly are they finding that value? That's kind of how we, in growth-driven design, we define usability. There's something of value. Are they having to click a bunch of places, they get lost, they can't find that value, and they're like, screw it, and they leave? Or can they instantly find the things that are valuable to them? So we want to start looking at that. Then you can focus on conversion rate optimization, or CRO. Everyone's got their own definition of CRO. So let me give you kind of my definition, or how we think about it in growth-driven design. On the site, you have a funnel, a path that people take. These are steps on the site to get to some conversion event. And at this point, we want to look at those steps, and we want to reduce the friction and reduce the amount of steps it takes for them to get from the top of that funnel all the way to the conversion point. Right? So that's where you can really start looking at your efforts there. And the last one is personalizing. So I think this is one thing that, as more and more technology comes out, is something that becomes very powerful for us as agencies. And this is the idea that every visitor that comes to the site is unique. They're coming with different needs. They're at a different point in their journey. And typically when you build a site, you have a homepage that looks the exact same for someone who's never heard of your company, from someone who's talking to the sales team, to someone who's a customer. They see the same homepage, to someone who's a lifelong customer. They're seeing the same homepage, the same content, the same offers. None of it is relevant to them probably. It's probably all speaking to the people earlier on in their journey. So here's where we start looking at how do we optimize the website based off of a particular persona, particular segment of the site. And lastly, expand. Now that we've gone through all this, there's going to be a time when you can now, you're going to start seeing diminishing returns on the effort you're putting in here. And you start to say, as a strategist, we need to start thinking about how we can expand the website to impact other things. The first one we talk about is products. So products, you can think about building on the site new digital products that are going to help get towards the goals. So I'll give you an example. At HubSpot, we have a tool called websitegrader.com. You can go to websitegrader.com, you put in your website URL, and it spits out a little report of the things you're doing really well on and the things you're not doing so well on. It's kind of like a speed test, but it tests a bunch of things, not just speed. And that's something that people find value in. They'd be willing to pay us some money, maybe $1 or $2 for that, but we offer it for free in exchange for some value on our own, which is like they become basically a lead. And we just start to learn a little bit about what people are struggling with on their websites, right? That helps us inform like the trainings we build and things like that. So you can look for your clients. How could we build products, digital products that provide value, that people would be willing to pay money for, but you offer for free? One other example of this is, anyone familiar with like Moz, the SEO analytics software? They have anyone use the Google like change log? It's like a history of all the changes that happen with Google. It's like anytime something happens on Google, you want to check there. And it's been linked to tons of times. They get so many links from that. Ends up causing a lot. They've written some blogs on it that ends up causing a lot of trial startups because so many people are coming there on a regular basis. It's a product. It's a content product, but it's a product that you could offer. Anyway, so you look at how you can do that with your clients. The next one is journey. And this goes to the point of looking at the user journey we built in the strategy and figuring out how can we weave the website into other parts of the journey. Typically, marketers, I'm a marketer, we think with like little blinders on when we build a site, and we're like, we're going to use the site to just generate brand new people in the door. Like we want to acquire new people, we want to convert them into leads. But that's a very narrow view of how to use the website in that journey. We can at this point start saying, okay, now that we're generating leads, how can we look at existing customers and build new customer sections onto the site? Maybe brand new customers, their first 30 days. How can we build a new customer onboarding experience onto the website that the sales reps can leverage and that the customer service reps can leverage every time they make a sale, and it causes customers to become more successful? Okay. How do we build advocate programs for those lifelong customers? So you start looking at other places along that journey the website can be used. And lastly, teams. Teams, the idea on teams are, again, with marketers, we very much think of the website as a tool for the marketing team, but it's equally a tool for any other team in the company for that team to get to their goals. So we start looking at other teams, could be HR, could be customer support, could be the product team, could be engineering, whatever they have, depending on the customer, and seeing what the goals of that department is and how the website could help. Let me give you a quick example. At HubSpot, one of our big initiatives now, we're growing like crazy, and like our number one company goal right now is hiring good people. If we don't hire good people, our company will not grow. And so our website team put a big emphasis on building out the careers section of our site. We wanted to build a funnel of really qualified, really good candidates. Because if we didn't do that, the HR team's not going to hit their goals and the company's not going to grow. And so when we look at using the website as a tool for the company to grow, not only are the leads and the visitors and the conversions and everything happening up here in the marketing is important, but now we're using it as a tool for the HR team. It's one of their most valuable tools is the HR department. So looking at how to use it in other parts of the company's site, company. All right. Not too much more now. I know I'm going quick. All right, so we determined where we're going to focus, what's our theme for the quarter, what types of activities are we going to do. That informs kind of the tactics we have to implement. Of course, there's user research you do along the way. Now that you have a specific area you're focusing in on, there's probably some research to answer some questions that you have. But at the end of the day, you're going to brainstorm with the team some action items, things that you're going to implement onto the site in order to try to improve at whatever particular theme that you're focusing on. You prioritize that. You basically look at each one of those action items. You say, what are the high impact items, medium impact items, and low impact items? And basically, you take all of the high impact items and you pull them into your sprint for the week, or for biweekly if you do biweekly sprints. So imagine you have a capacity. I know I'm going through this quickly. This is like in detail in the cert. Imagine this is your capacity based off of how much the client is paying you on a monthly basis. Always leave some flex time because there's always going to be little updates. There's going to be maintenance. There's going to be things that come out of the woodwork. You misestimate. So there's about 20% flex time. 80% is building and optimizing. You draw the line here on your wish list. These are all the prioritized action items. Anything above that line happens that cycle. Anything below that line, you review the next time you come around and you're planning the next cycle. Does that make sense? People follow that? This is a beautiful tool for your strategists because this is what you're going to use to protect against scope creep on a monthly basis. Because the client's going to want more and more and more. Now, here's the beautiful thing. As an agency, if you continually draw the line and the client says, well, I want to implement this. You're like, okay, well, we're going to have to pull something out of here. What do you want to pull out in order to make room for this? I can't. I want it all. Okay, well, then this month we can increase the size of your engagement to make sure we do all this. And if we're doing this on a regular basis, we can increase the size of your engagement to make sure we have more capacity to get more things done. Right? So it's a great upselling tool as well when you look at capacity and upselling for the ongoing relationship. Now, the last part of the planning step, and I know this sounds like a lot, but once your team gets in the rhythm of this, it goes pretty quick. The last part is what we call writing out an action item card. You take all the things you're actually going to implement, the high impact items, and you build out what we call an action item card. At the top, you have a job story. This goes to the jobs to be done framework about what the person is trying to accomplish. And you just write out this simple sentence. As whatever that persona name is, when the situation they found themselves in, why did they come to the site in the first place? I want to, what are they trying to find so I can, the outcome they want to achieve. Then you say a problem statement. So this is what they're trying to do. What's preventing them? This is where your data comes in. This is where the click heat maps come in. This is where the recordings come in. This shows you the problems they're running into in trying to accomplish this. And then lastly, you build a hypothesis statement. It's just a one-sentence statement for this persona visiting this page. We believe that changing whatever the current thing is on the page to your idea you brainstormed will, and you have a desired outcome that relates back to this outcome. And there's a metric that you measure specifically for this. Okay, so this is like basically like what do you want to do and why do you think what impact is that going to have on the user? So you're building out like a really good story, and it looks like a lot. It's just 3 sentences. And this is when you go through with your clients every month, you can tell this story very, very easily about like why you're working on these things and then have a way to measure it. The last little thing is like housekeeping stuff. So you do have to put in, again, that expected impact, like the score. Usually you score it on a 1 to 10. How much effort is required? And that's important because you may have 2 items that score an 8 in impact and an 8 in impact, but one you can get done in a day and one will take 2 weeks. And so your strategist may reprioritize based off of the impact or the effort required to implement. And then lastly, your experimental design, which is just a scary way to say, what do we need to set up to test if this is true or not? Are we going to do an A/B test? Are we going to do like cohort reporting? There's a bunch of different ways that you can track whether or not this is true. I think the most common one is A/B testing, but that's not always the best testing method. Just depends on what the experiment is. All right, to wrap this up here, now that that's where a lot of the calories go during the continuous improvement, is the planning. It's kind of the like Abe Lincoln, I don't know if he actually said this quote, there's probably misquoted, but like if I got to chop down the tree, I'm going to sharpen my axe for 3 hours, and the last hour I'll cut it. It's kind of the same thing. Like we're spending a lot of time in the plan to make sure the things we actually build have the intended impact we want. So here it's just an all-out team sprint. You set up your experiments and you launch the things. And after a while, you let them run and you start to get some of those results based off of your experiment design, whether it's an A/B test or see how people are interacting. You can see if your hypothesis is true. And a lot of times it might not be true. But the key to this, the reason we put this step in is you say, what did this teach us about our audience? How am I smarter about our audience now that I know this? What happened that we didn't expect? And that will help inform, as you learn more and more about your audience and how they're behaving, what they're interested in, not interested in, it will inform the next time you go around and you're planning your next sprint cycle. Okay? I'll give you an example in just a second. So then the last part is just publishing your findings. Just like in coding, it's very important that you document everything because if that person leaves, you have written history of what happened. You also can go back and look at the experiments you ran a year ago and the learnings you had. So publishing your findings is a step that's easy to skip, but very, very important. All right, the last part of this is transferring. So now that you're learning about your users, you're learning about your audience, how do you take those learnings and help inform other departments in what they're doing, and at the same time, ask those departments some questions. Maybe something came up that you weren't aware of, you weren't sure on, so you talk to the sales teams, you talk to the sales leaders, you talk to the customer service leaders, and you ask them questions, again, to help inform the next time you come around to the planning step. And it's also important to collaborate with other teams so that you have this consistent experience. You don't have like one experience that customer goes through when they're working with the marketers on the website, and then they go over to the sales team, and they're like, the sales team has no idea what they did over here. So one example of where this is important that at HubSpot, anyone use like our sales tools? Like we have a free sales tool that has like email tracking. You can see if people are opening your email. You can set timing on email. Basic kind of email function. Yep, working on using it. That's awesome. So a long time ago, that used to be called Signals, and Signals was an internal startup at the company that they were just trying to figure out what is this thing we're going to build. And so Signals had a question about their homepage. They said, what trigger is going to cause our audience to take action? Like, what's the psychological trigger that's going to cause them to take action? And they set up a simple experiment on the homepage. They had one that played on social proof trigger. And the social proof trigger is basically like the idea that if you're walking, like I'm new here in Nashville, never been here. If I'm looking for a place to eat, I'm walking down the street, you could have one restaurant over here that's like dead empty, and then one that's just packed to the gills. Well, most likely I'm going to go to the one that's packed to the gills, knowing that if these people think it's good and it's packed, it's probably good food. The one that's empty, there's like, tumbleweed coming out of it. It's like, it might not be quite as good. So it's like that we as humans, we look at what other people are doing, and we use that as like confidence and trust building. So we built a social proof. Literally all they did in under 30 minutes, they took a screenshot from the Google, the Chrome extension store of the number of ratings that we had and the stars. And they just took a screenshot and made that the homepage with a call to action under. That's it, 30 minutes. Then they did a second one that was authority. The idea of authority trigger is that we as humans tend to give trust and credibility to people that we see as authoritative figures. So the reason that you follow what your doctor says is because they are an authority, so no matter what they say, even the President of the United States is still going to do what the doctor says, maybe. So we built a page that had an industry expert on it and had a quote about like how, I think it was he liked using the tool. And the last one was just features and benefits, like rational side of the brain. Like, what are the features and benefits of this thing? And we tested it. We found for our audience, and this is the interesting thing. If you go online and search A/B testing case studies, you're going to find a case study that each one of these is the right way to do it. You're going to be like, oh, this worked for us. Oh, this worked for us. Oh, this is the way to do it. We found this out in our A/B test. The reality is, for your audience, has nothing to do with those other case studies. Those are in different industries, different audiences. So for your audience, you have to run these to learn. We found that overwhelmingly social proof was the trigger that caused people to convert and sign up for the Signals tool. Now, where the transfer comes in, so that it was like overwhelming. So they redid the website then. They did a new version that was like much better done than just a screenshot and built it around social proof. The transfer comes in when they met with the marketing team. This was the product team doing this. When they met with the marketing team, they said, hey, look at this experiment we ran. We learned that our audience reacts really well to social proof. How might you incorporate that into your marketing efforts? So now the marketing team went over here and they started building landing pages, ebooks, emails, all of that, incorporating social proof into all these other activities that they were doing, knowing that that's the trigger that our specific audience reacts best to. So this is where this part can be really, really powerful. Who's following me? Does that make sense? Cool. All right. And again, this is a cycle, so you do this every month. Again, it sounds like a lot, but you get in the rhythm. It goes pretty quickly. You just repeat it through until it could be every 2 weeks, could be every month, depending on how fast you want to move. And continually building the action items until you hit whatever the metrics are for that quarter, and then you can move on and reassess. Do you focus somewhere else on the roadmap for the next quarter? All right. So those are the 3 steps, or the 3 stages of the growth-driven design methodology. You have strategy, launchpad, continuous improvement. And what you see is that this methodology, when we look at traditional, we have a methodology where you're launching quickly and every single month making impactful improvements to the results of your clients' businesses. And you get all this opportunity that never was available before with the traditional design process. And also, marketing and sales lives on top of this. So that's one thing. I know a lot of you, myself included, when I was at the agency, we really focused on web design. But if you look at the goals of your clients' businesses, they probably need more than just web design. They probably need marketing services, maybe they need paid ads, maybe they need sales, like sales enablement services. There's a lot of other services for them to get to their goals, not just the website. Maybe that's something you provide, maybe you partner with another agency that you can tag team that type of stuff. Going back to the risks, we now have a system that spreads out the cost over time. You have something that you're launching quickly and improving over time. Again, it's built on an agile framework, so things are going on time, on budget. You're using data to make your decisions versus making assumptions, and you're continuously improving. Now, what I find when you pitch this as an agency, we have a class on just how to sell this. You're probably wondering, like, how do you package and price and sell this thing to a client? We talk about this. Everything on the left-hand side, I generally find small businesses are interested in. If you're working with mom and pop shops or dental agencies, like they don't have a ton of budget, they don't have a ton of time and resources, like this is gonna be the value proposition you talk about when you pitch this service. On this side, a lot of times this is the enterprise sites. They have budget, they don't really care. They're used to sites taking a year long, they don't care. They're more interested in making informed decisions based off of data and the continuous optimization and improvement of these hundreds of thousands or millions of visitors coming to their site. And then medium-sized websites, like medium, I say anything from 100,000 to maybe 20,000 US dollars to build, like that medium bucket, they're kind of depends on what their experience is. Now, you're probably wondering out of all this, Luke, this is all great. There's a lot of theory here, but is anyone doing this? So I started talking about this about 3 years ago. We now have 1,000 agencies in 50 countries implementing growth-driven design with their clients. And we sent out a survey last year to basically say, how is this going? Now that you have this new methodology, how's it going? And in the survey, the agencies reported that on average, growth-driven design allowed them to launch the site in under 60 days, whereas the exact same agencies, same people, same agencies, but just using traditional method, launched in 108 days, was 2 weeks late, and they set it and forget it, versus 60 days, and then they improved based off of data. So your clients are going to see value quicker. They're going to be excited working with you versus they're paying you and not seeing anything real value for 108 days and 2 weeks late. Now, the more important one, this is like your money shot when you sell this to clients, is at the end of the day, this is what they care about: visitors, leads, and revenue. And we asked those agencies, 350 of them, we said, when you do traditional design and you do growth-driven design, what do you see differently 6 months later? And they said that in growth-driven design, they reported seeing 16.9% more leads 6 months after, and 11.2% more revenue based off of their efforts with growth-driven design. Kind of makes sense, like you're not set and forgetting it, you're gonna be optimizing it, so of course it's gonna improve, but this is a really powerful, like, just visualization of like the impact that this can have. For agencies, I spent all night doing this graphic, by the way. I really wanted to put that in there. I was trying to find like the best one they had in Keynote. So it's all downhill from here. That was like the best one. So the agency challenges, we talked about some of this: hard to grow with projects, scope creep, no ongoing system. Now, the reason growth-driven design is so powerful for agencies is it flips your business model. It's no longer project-based work. You sign them up for a retainer, 6-month-long retainer. Some people do 12, but let's say 6 months, where you have a consistent flow of revenue coming in every single month for those 6 months. So it totally flips your business model. Again, it run on an agile one, so you start protecting against that scope creep. Anytime scope creep comes, you're losing out on profit margin, because that time has to come from somewhere, and you're still paying for that, your developers, to work on that time. So you lose profit margin. You have this package, step-by-step methodology. We've also found, because it's the early days, this is very much a differentiator. When a prospect comes to you and they're looking at 2 different agencies, if you get them bought in that traditional design is broken because you asked them about their previous redesign experience and they said it was horrible, and you say, yeah, we hear that a lot. We have this new system that we've been using with success called growth-driven design. Are you interested in hearing about it? Now that positions you in the mind of the prospect very differently than the competition. Do I go with the competition using a broken playbook? Do I use this new playbook with this org? So, great differentiator. And lastly, boosting client lifetime value, LTV, lifetime value. That basically means that we've seen them stick around longer because you're driving more results, so they want to continue working with you. And you're also building a much better relationship. Like I remember back when we did sites, we'd launch it and I wouldn't talk to a client for like a year and I didn't know what was going on in their life. Here you're working with them on an ongoing basis. So you build really strong relationships. And what we found for the agencies on that same survey is that on average, it doubled their amount of website engagements. They went from, on average, a traditional site being 18,500 to growth-driven design, 48,000 per engagement. All right. 1 minute. All right, we're at the very end. All right, back to Edmund. Remember Edmund? When we left off Edmund, he was in the storm of his life. He was stuck in the storm of his life. And he had to figure out, what do I do to move up the side of the mountain? And he said, look, we planned out this map, this carefully mapped out plan. And it's okay, it didn't work out. But what I can do is I can make a moment-by-moment decision how to proceed up the mountain. I can collect data, the things I see, the team morale, to make decisions to go up the mountain. And lo and behold, on May of 1953 at 11:30 a.m., Edmund and his team reached the peak of Mount Everest. So I'll leave you here today with the quote from Edmund. He says, "I will come again and conquer you, because as a mountain you cannot grow, but as a human I can." And so that's what I ask all of you in this room to do, is to grow as a web designer, grow as a web developer, to grow out of this broken playbook we've been using, and to start building peak performing websites using growth-driven design. Thank you very much. And for the certifications, this is all you need to go to. It's just growth-drivendesign.com to get the slide deck, to get the certification, to get all that stuff. And I'll be around the rest of the day.